Okay, so what we're looking at is Perfect Brilliant Stillness. And this is by David Carse. And I'm at page, I'll tell you in a minute. I'm at page 103, and I'm going to be skipping around. But okay, here we go. Who am I? The age-old question. Certainly not this body, temporary, changing, physical molecules and atoms and particles that even the physicists tell us ultimately don't exist as such. Certainly not this mind, thoughts that come from I know not where and which I cannot control. Ultimately, it comes to this. The only thing of which we can be sure is the consciousness deep inside, deep behind and beyond personality, prior to all the variations of who or what I have thought I was, the sense, the knowing I am, the irreducible, intuitive self. And that's the self with the capital S, the life force that exists and knows it exists. That is all. That is the only constant. All the rest is a construct, a fabrication. Inside all the layers, each of us has the same experience of I am existence, the same experience of the self inexplicably. This common experience is attributed to various selves, each having the exact same experience of self. This impersonal self, with a capital S, is deemed personal, an individual self, a me, inhabiting each individual body-mind. After all, that is what seems apparent. But you don't have to dig very far before this makes no sense. The idea that there are separate individual selves is only possible because in each apparent self, there is experience of self, that ultimate self, that life force that's behind the personality. This experience has been misconstrued to be a personal experience, the experience of the me. It's construed to be a personal experience that belongs to a personal body-mind. The life force, the self animating one body and mind, is deemed different from that animating another because the expression of that self is different in each. We concentrate on the inconstant variable expression and miss the constant that lies beneath. The constant, there is only one. There is only one self with a capital S, one awareness. Consciousness finding expression in the many apparent bodies and minds. My knowing I am is the same self knowing as you knowing I am. Reality is that which underlies appearances. I'm going to read that sentence again because it's really important. My knowing, the sense that I have of I am, I exist, is the same self, that same life force, knowing as you knowing I am. Reality is that which underlies appearances. So your sense of I am is the same feeling in me. I have that same feeling, I am. It's not different. The expression of the I amness may be different in each of us, but the sense of I am, I exist, is exactly the same. Okay. The self, the I am awareness, absolute is what underlies all appearances. What we call individuals are only apparent relative constructs. In fact, all of what is called physical and mental reality is only an appearance. Which is why, truly, there is nothing happening here, despite what it seems, despite appearances. Nothing in manifest physical reality is real. Nothing is happening. And David, the author, along with everything else, is a concept, an idea, a thought, a bubble, which ultimately doesn't exist. Now, when he says nothing is happening, that's when one is able to have a realization that this life is as a dream. Because in a dream, wonderful things can happen, horrific things can happen, and one wakes up and it's a dream. So in that sense, he's saying nothing is happening. Now, obviously, at this level of reality, the dream for many people is a nightmare, and a nightmare from which they are not able to wake up. And so, now he goes on to say, for a while after it happened, after he had the realization of his true nature, after the jungle, because it happened to him in the jungle, there was an acute awareness of transition, of an understanding having occurred as a leap and a sense that this mind and body had yet to catch up. There seemed to be the weight and momentum not only of the life and history of this body-mind, but also that of a culture and a race having a belief that things are otherwise than what was seen now in the light of understanding. In daily living, the mind or body would respond with a thought or action with which it was accustomed to responding. It was actually pretty amusing. It kept me entertained during that time because there was no content, no supporting emotion or belief which had previously been there and which originally gave rise to these thoughts and actions. Now they were empty. Okay, somewhere I came across the analogy of the electric fan, which continues to spin for a while after the plug has been pulled. Without the original support, it would seem that these habitual thoughts and actions would fall away. And to some extent, this has proved true. Much of that momentum has wound down. On the other hand, to an amazing extent, the David thing continues to behave more or less like David. The organism will respond as it responds, according to the programming and conditioning. It is not a matter of any importance. After the realization occurs, it can appear from the outside as if nothing has changed. And it appears from the inside like nothing is the same. That too is an approximation and not true, but it's the gist. This is the meaning of the Zen saying, before awakening, chop wood, carry water. After awakening, chop wood, carry water. Chopping wood and carrying water are the normal, basic, necessary, everyday occupation in the simple agrarian culture where this saying originated. The point is simply that things seem to carry on pretty much as before. Life goes on. Within, there is understanding of what is, where before there was a dream state. But from without, the organism continues its appointed rounds. Why not? Okay. I know that this body is inanimate, not an individual, an appearance only, animated by self, the one awareness. It doesn't even have a life of its own. Rather, it is being lived. There is an acute awareness of this body-mind organism being lived rather than autonomously living. What I once called my mind is a stream of thoughts that do not originate from any me, but from the one awareness. There is no individual, no David. Everything that appears to happen here, including the thoughts and actions that arise in this mind and body, arise spontaneously from awareness, in spite of my apparent deliberations. Since it is obvious that there is no one here to have control over my thoughts or over the course of events in this apparent reality, concepts of guilt and pride and responsibility and obligation all become meaningless. Sure, our societies would find it difficult to exist and function without fostering the belief in these concepts to control individuals and populations. But none of these concepts exist in the what is of awareness. They don't exist in the what is of awareness. Everything arises spontaneously in awareness. Nothing needs to happen or needs not to happen. There is no point, no purpose, no why. Why questions are fundamentally unanswerable. Everything arises spontaneously in awareness. The constant of asking why is simply the mind's attempt to grasp for control. For one raised with religious beliefs, a fundamental shift is encountered here. Even when those religious beliefs were long ago understood to be blind, misconceived constructs, still there remained the kernel, the sense of the other. Martin Buber's I and Thou, Rudolf Otto's numinous sense of the idea of the holy. Even when a belief in God as a personal being had fallen away, still this idea of the other had been maintained. An other toward whom to direct the human sense of awe, someone toward whom to feel the gratitude, source, spirit. The tendency, without being aware of it, when one hears about this on an intellectual level, is to make presence or consciousness that other, that spirit. Just change the name. You can hear a lot of people talking about consciousness exactly the way they used to talk about God or spirit. Ultimately, there is no other, because there is no individual. There is no thou, because there is no I. There is no spirit, because there is nothing which is not spirit. The split of dualism is not. There is only one. I am not other than this one. Trapped in the world of concepts and duality, the mind loses traction, slips, spins out. And then the thought comes, there is nothing to think about. Then there is stillness. There is awareness. Yeah.
On page 104,
Yes.
when he was talking about the analogy of the electric fan,
Yes.
he was talking about the experience of enlightenment, wasn't he? He'd pull out the plug and the thing still.
Well, no, the old way of being still seems to come, maybe even the identity as a me may still come up. Just like the fan still spins, the old stuff still, but then eventually it stops.
Well, I don't know. Did he say eventually it stops? I thought he said you can just go on. It's with the condition.
Well, what stops is the inner realization of what's going on. See, there's no more an identity with a me. Before, when the thoughts arose, or the feelings arose, or even the actions arose, there was an identity with them. That's my action, my thoughts. Now there's a realization that there is no me. So how can I identify with those things?
So if prior
there's
to
no one home, he said.
If prior to enlightenment, my consciousness, my awareness was saturated with neurotic anxiety, right?
Right.
Then I get an awakening. I don't want to call it an experience, but whatever he refers to as the awakening, right?
Right.
So my awareness is still saturated with neurotic, anxious perseverating.
Somewhat. They appear, it still appears in that awareness, but it's different. He said the outside may seem the same, but inside it's different. It's like even now.
Where did he say the inside?
Here, let me find it. I'll tell you.
It was on 104.
No, I don't think so. Wait a minute. No, the analogy of the electric fan. Wait a minute. After the realization, he calls it not awakening, realization. After the realization occurs, it can appear from the outside as if nothing has changed. And it appears from the inside like nothing is the same.
Okay, but keep going.
But this too is an approximation and not true, but it's the gist of it. This is the meaning of the Zen saying. Before awakening, chop wood and carry water, and after awakening, chop wood and carry water.
Okay.
Everything goes on as before.
Yes.
But now there's no identity anymore as a me doing these things. It's just appearances. They're happening. It's so presence.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
So before the realization, as I chopped wood and carried water, I was a miserable, anxious wretch, worried about everything.
That's
After
right.
the realization, I'm chopping wood and carrying water, and I'm still a miserable, anxious
No,
wretch?
no.
How so? Where does it say it's
No, the point is simply that things seem to carry on pretty much as before. Life goes on,
Yes.
but within there is understanding of what is, of what, of what the what is, where before there was the dream state. But from without, the organism continues its appointed rounds. So now the plug has been pulled. Look, it's put it in a simpler way.
So I just want to be in plain language.
Yeah, okay, in
So
plain.
you're saying to me, so that I'm not correct, that you're saying that after realization, I will chop wood and carry water, but I will have what? A blank mind and inner peace?
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
well, he did.
Well, but there's no more an identification with a me, because he said no one's home. This David thing doesn't exist.
Just a minute. So are you saying that just like before realization, when I was chopping wood and carrying water, after realization, when I chop the wood and carry water, my head is still full of nervous, anxious thoughts, only I'm not identifying with them?
Well, but there's probably, most probably, less. Look, the thoughts are coming from the me. The thoughts are coming from the past, from memory, right?
Mhm.
The thought, it's a mechanical process in the brain. So
It kind of like, I think a little stumbling block is really, what does he mean by realization?
the realization that there is no me. He
Where
said,
does that come from?
there is no David. There is no Hugo.
Well, that
There
I
is
think is
no,
probably the thing that's confusing me a little bit. It's because like there's steps being not explained. You've got to get to the point where you realize that you're not who you think you are. You got
okay,
to get to the point where you realize the fallacy of me, of I.
okay.
And
So,
when you can put a pin in that, as you will so brilliantly point out, if I may use the pun, uh, then you can begin to see, well, maybe what's going on here is a product of thought, but not what is.
well,
Well, hold on, let's bring Bill up to speed.
yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
we're reading Perfect Brilliant Stillness.
Oh, there he is. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And Carse was just talking about his realization experience.
Yeah.
And he made the point that um, before realization, there's chopping wood and carrying water. And
Yep.
after realization, there's chopping wood and carrying water. And he used the analogy that when you unplug the electric fan, it keeps spinning for a while, even though the source of the energy has been cut off. And he
Yeah.
said it's the same thing after realization. Some of the old program and patterning continues. So I said, well, let me get this straight. So before realization, as I chopped wood and carried water, I was a nervous, anxious wreck, my head full of fears and insecurities. After realization, I'm chopping wood and carrying water, and what? I no longer have all those thoughts running through my mind? Evelyn said, no, you may still have all those.
Well, no, not the way you're putting it. Listen, with realization, there's no more fear and there's no more desire. However, thoughts might arise, some of the old pattern of thinking might arise, but there's now a witnessing of that because you're no longer identified
Okay,
with
I
it.
just want to make it clear. I just want to make it clear. So he and you were saying that after realization, those old anxious thoughts, as I chop wood and carry water, might still be there. But what? They have no meaning for me.
That's
They're
right.
like passing clouds.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And one pays no attention.
I just
Because
want to be
when
clear.
a thought arises, most people start dwelling,
Mhm.
and the dwelling just sucks you in more to the suffering.
Okay, hold on. I just want to finish the thought. And he is saying that what enables me now to see the crazy making thoughts as passing clouds is that I no longer believe there's a personal me in the story.
That's right. There's no, not that I believe. That's the felt experience,
Uh-huh.
that there is no me identification.
Mhm.
Now the identification is with the absolute, he keeps saying the self with a capital S.
Right.
That's where the identification is
Mhm.
now. So, and what happened to him, I mean, that was like a gift.
And so that's the point you were making. So now, yes. So eventually the thoughts subside because there's nobody stirring the pot.
That's right. It has to end,
Okay,
it
okay.
has to, right. So, and what he says here,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you start at 7 or did you start at 7:30?
no, 7.
Okay, I wrote down 7:30. That's why I'm late.
Oh, no, 7. I'm sure.
You'll
No,
be spanked later.
No, I copied the invitation and had 7:30 in the invitation.
it did.
Yes.
Oh, I've got to check. Oh, my
Yeah,
dear.
I hope I'm wrong, but I
Oh, I
just
hope
copied
you're wrong.
exactly what was in the invitation.
Oh,
Okay,
well,
well,
I'll
something.
double check that. Something
Okay, sorry
was
about
off.
that.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, well,
Okay. I like at the end here when he says, trapped in the world of concepts and duality, the mind loses traction, slips and spins out. The thought comes, there is nothing to think about. Then there is stillness, there is awareness. And that's that awareness or presence after realization is what's chopping wood and carrying water.
Yeah.
So where does
I always
yeah.
took that, Evie, as before realization, you're just doing your everyday, ordinary lives, right? You're chopping water and fetching water.
Yeah.
But after enlightenment or realization, nothing changes. You go right back to chopping water
Absolute, that's what,
and carrying water,
right.
chopping wood and carrying water, but with a different point of view. You
Right.
know,
Yes, it's a whole different perspective.
yeah,
Because
you're
now
still living your right. Different
there's no
perspective.
me, there's no
Yeah.
me. So it's a different perspective, but you're still living your life. He says life goes on.
Exactly.
Right. And you may even respond to life situations with the same kind of personality. So if you're more introverted, you might still be that. If you're more extrovert, you might still be that. So the personality,
Well,
it's like,
yeah, you need to rejoin life.
oh,
You,
of course,
you
and you
can't have
do.
this huge enlightenment experience and then drift off into
No,
emptiness and stay there forever. You need to
right,
get back into your
right.
life but with a different point of view.
That's right. And Jean Klein told us that what happens is when the personality is needed, the personality appears. So when you're interacting and going through life and the personality is needed, it's there. But there is no longer an identification with it as the me. And now,
Sort of
go ahead.
the barrier between self and other has dissolved.
That's right.
So,
And Bill, what he said in the beginning that I thought was so important, and let me just tell you that again, and it's good to hear it again anyway.
Sure.
There is only one. There is only one self, one awareness, consciousness, finding expression in the many apparent bodies and mind. But my knowing I am is the same self with a capital S, knowing as you knowing I am. Reality is that which underlies appearances. So you have a sense, we all do. I mean, that's something we all, that's a fact for all of us. There's the sense I am, I exist.
You know, Rupert Spira, you
Yes,
know
of
Rupert
course I
Spira.
know. Yes, yeah.
That's what he has said, that the only thing that can ever be said with any
Right.
definity is that I am.
That's right.
Everything else is sort of an interpretation or whatever. But
Right.
I am
Well,
is the only
that
truthful thing you can say is I am.
that's right. In fact, Balthasar said that the only fact is the fact of the sense I am, and everything else is a concept.
Yeah.
So, but that sense that I am, and you have that same feeling I am, right?
Yeah.
You have a feeling I exist. I also have a feeling I exist. Well, he says it's the same self that's behind the personality. The life force is what's feeling I am, I exist. And it's in all of us.
Yeah.
It's the same in all of us.
And we've all experienced that too, in varying degrees. About there are times when your mind is blank, you're not thinking about anything, and yet you're still here.
That's right.
Mhm.
And to me, that's the basic confirmation that what's being said is valid for me.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the starting point of where you've got to more or less. That's where I think understanding begins.
Yes,
So
because
that, yeah,
that's a direct experience.
awareness without the
Right.
movement of thought.
It's a
Right.
confirmation of what's being said.
That's
Right.
right.
And that's the other point about this thing is that as you do start getting some of this knowledge, some of this recognition, so on and so forth, thoughts have a different way of landing on you. For me, I'll get excited. I'll still blast out this, that, and the other thing, but it's very short-lived. At some point, I come to the point of realizing this is an act of thought. These thoughts are arising that I don't have control over,
Right.
and I can't give them the respect of reality because they're not. They come from the past. That's the only place they come from. It's old thought, it's garbage. Put the lid on and get on with drinking your soda, which is right in front of you.
Mhm.
Well, that's why, yes, that's why, uh, what's his name? The one we visited in Amsterdam. He said, do you remember our friend from Amsterdam who's passed away?
Oh,
Yeah.
Sailor Bar?
No, 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 no. Anyway, he said, you don't know what your next thought is going to be. You have
Thank God.
you have no idea what your next thought is going to be.
Imagine if we did.
Well, then we would have happy thoughts, right? We would
Right.
have happy thoughts. Why would I have frightening thoughts? So we have no control. And also, Bill, in this little chapter, when he says that, people ask why, you don't understand, you want an understanding. He says, why is an unanswerable question. And the reason that the mind keeps asking it is because it's grasping for control.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's the self that's asking why.
that's right. And it's scary in a way. Well, unless you have that realization of your true nature, to live on this planet, this rock that we're living on, really having no control and having an awareness that there's a finality to this. I mean, that's a pretty heavy thing to live with. So
Yeah.
the mind wants for security, control.
When you get to my age, you kind of figure, well, I've seen enough of it. I think I want to go find a soft resting spot,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, you get to a point where I think I've been satisfied with my life, and that it comes to an end. Well, I don't know what the end is. Nobody's ever told me what end is. You can see a lot of versions of it, but this work has given me a peace of mind that I can approach that question with very, very, very little anxiety.
Great.
Wonderful.
So, and I mean that sincerely.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's one of the benefits of the
Yep.
work. They
Yep.
say that you'll no longer fear coming to an end.
Yeah, it's like the final curtain comes down. The act is completed. You know, the play is over. Now get on to you got to go back now and I don't know, tend to a leaky roof or a dripping faucet or something.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
that's the reality.
Yes, 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 yes. So are you able to, Ugo, in daily life, not fret over things because you have no control over the outcome of things?
Well, I'm amazed at times that I don't fret over some of the things that come up. And I really, when I look back in retrospect, I used to fret a lot. I thought I had control. That was the whole thing. You've got to give up this sense that you run the show. You don't run the show. And I don't know who runs it, but it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big change in my life, seeing that and accepting it more than anything else. Varying degrees of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And a sense of a surrender to life, it's whatever life brings because I have no control of what it will bring.
But we haven't been brought up that way as a male. I've been brought up to, well, you can conquer, you can do this, you can do that, you can be a soldier, you can go out and kill people and all kinds of stuff. And you've been given a lot of stuff that you didn't ask for, but you've been given it. And now I'm learning how to handle that which I was given, which I don't really want, but I didn't know I didn't want it.
Right, right.
So now there's also a realization when one responds to a situation in the old way, in the conditioned way, right? The old way. There is an awareness, a witnessing of that response. And so you're able to pull the plug on it. You don't have to go with it.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Ugo was talking about
Yeah.
that before, sure.
So
You
I'm
can-
no longer on automatic.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. The mind doesn't pull you around.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And that's
No,
what
it can be almost as simple as which Billy, I express this every now and then. There's only two things you really have to do in life. Only two. The first one is breathe in, and the second one is breathe out. Everything else is optional.
right.
I mean, really, you can get that simple.
Right. Right.
And you don't control either one, though, do you?
Pardon?
It just happen. You don't control either breathing
That's
in or
right.
breathing out.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's interesting also, one of the things he says here, wait, let me find it again. I know that this body is inanimate, not an individual, an appearance only, animated by self with a capital S, the one awareness. It doesn't even have a life of its own. Rather, it is being lived. There is an acute awareness of this body-mind organism being lived rather than autonomously living. What I once called my mind is a stream of thoughts, thoughts that do not originate from any me, but from the one awareness. So, yes, what is it that brings sentience to this body, right? You know, what is it? What is it that pumps the blood and beats the heart and breathes the lungs and does the digestion? What is that
Magic.
magic? So in that sense, he said, we're being lived by that one awareness or consciousness,
Well, it's the life force.
the life force.
And it was pretty amazing. You know, we have a grandson who's a PhD in planetary
Science.
And you know, he was saying that, you know, we really don't know with absolute certainty the origin of life.
Of course not.
Right. It's
Absolutely.
it's really a mystery to a large degree. And so this life force, it's a miracle, a mystery, or whatever. It's
Well, that's human arrogance that there are no questions that we can't answer. That's
right.
human arrogance. You want to have an answer to it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
so we have a
it
God
dawned on
that
me quite some time ago that there are certain questions that you're a fool to ask because there are no answers. You
Well,
have to accept that there are no answers, and that's tough
Well,
for some folks.
yeah. Well, you know, that's in physics and philosophy and neuroscience, that's referred to as the hard question. They're trying to understand from whence does consciousness, from whence does this life force come? And it's a pretty big raging debate, right?
well, yes, but many or some of the scientists are saying that the ground of all being is consciousness, so that everything is an appearance in consciousness, and it's
Well, it
conscious,
has to appear somewhere.
but appearing
Otherwise,
in
it just isn't.
consciousness, so
Yeah.
that even matter appears in consciousness, space and time appear in consciousness. So that consciousness then is living the body.
As opposed to trying to understand how matter produces consciousness.
Right.
That's the
Right.
old.
Well, that's
yeah,
the debate.
That's the debate.
Right. But according to this teaching and this non-dual teaching, consciousness is the ground of all being.
yeah, I
And
think the nuclear physicists would agree with that. That consciousness is, you can't call it a real thing, but you know, it's not some idea.
that's
Consciousness is
that's
consciousness is.
that's right. And you are that.
Yes.
Right. Mhm.
So I guess the challenge is to remember that as we go through life, and we take ourselves so seriously, or we get on the train of those thoughts that cause us to fear and to suffer, to have an awareness, to be able to witness that and pull the plug.
Yeah.
I think the miracle is to know that there is a plug to pull.
And there is, right?
Well,
The
that's
seeing is
yeah.
the doing.
Well, that's the cutting insight that allows for some escape route from the madness, so to speak.
Yeah.
But once it's pointed out, you have to have the mindfulness to see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I keep saying, to me, where it really started to make a lot of sense was when I finally understood or accepted that all of my thoughts I've generated from experiences that I've had, and they're recorded in memory. And when I say I'm thinking, that's where it's coming from.
Mhm.
And we've gone over 1,000 times all the fallacies and the pitfalls of living a life in that mode.
Mhm.
So, it's very difficult because just 2 hours ago, I had a friend stop by who's a lawyer, and he's done some legal work for me, but he's very religious. And he keeps trying to preach the Bible to me, and we have violent discussions on it. And we more or less talked about some of the stuff. I was right here. I was trying to get him to see the role that thought plays in his thinking, and the fallacy of relying on thinking as the ultimate answer. And mm-mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've done the self-inquiry thing several times,
Yeah,
and I never can find anything of any substance. I
that,
just see things coming and going. And so maybe with your friend, you could ask him to give it some thought. What to examine his mind. What is happening with his mind? What's coming? What's going? Is there anything that's permanent that you can pull out and say, yes, this is me? Anyways, I've done that sort of
Yeah.
Ramana Maharshi self-inquiry, and
yes.
I did it the
Well,
first time. It's like, wow, you're right. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. We are just impermanence.
That's right.
so
How did you begin that, Bill? What was the process?
I just sat. I read about doing the self-inquiry, and so I just sat in the chair and I just started looking at my thoughts and trying to identify anything that I could say, this is Bill White, this thought. But no, it would rapidly evolve into another thought and another thought. There was never a thought that would say, yeah, this is Bill White, or a feeling or anything else that I could pull out and say, yeah, this is permanent. This is who you are. It
Yes,
was always just flux, things just coming and going.
right,
Mhm.
correct. What is it that was not coming and going?
Right, and that's I've had a hard time getting my mind around that, basically because you can't get your mind around what is consciousness. It just is. And so it's almost like it just starts to hit you that you're just okay with what's going on. You're okay with what's happening in this moment. And that's to me, that's consciousness.
So that which was witnessing the coming and going of thoughts, the changing.
Yes.
So there had to be something changeless that could
Right.
witness the changing.
But to try to identify that, you can't because it's not an
That's
object.
right, because it's not an object.
Exactly.
You can only be it.
Right.
Mhm.
yeah,
That's
it's about it as fleeing as energy or a force. This idea of what is it? What am I? What am I? And basically, you're the thing that's so damn hard to describe because it's not an object. It's an energy or a force.
Mhm.
That's all.
it's
The only way
being.
that I can really get a better understanding of it. It's an energy or a force that has no beginning and has no end,
Absolutely.
and that's it. And that's all you can say about it. You really can't say a lot more because you just don't know. But you know it's there.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, it was a nice talk. Very nice talk. Well, we're going to have another break now.
We're having another short break, guys. But we will be back and we'll continue, right?
By break, you mean it'll be a couple of weeks again before we meet again?
Yeah, we'll be a couple of
Okay.
weeks.
We're off. We're off to Italy, Ugo.
Bravi, bravi, bravi.
Puglia.
Benvenuti, benvenuti.
Pul-
Benvenuti.
Puglia.
Puglia.
Yeah.
That's about halfway up, isn't it? Midway?
Adriatic coast.
That's a beautiful coast. I've never been on the Adriatic
And
coast, but
we haven't
I,
either.
I, I
Right, right.
Well, it'll
beautiful.
be an interesting time to be in Italy with the passing of the Pope and all that. Maybe
Yeah.
Yeah,
they'll be starting to decide how to select the next one.
that'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You might get white smoke before you get there. Who knows?
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
All right,
All right,
guys.
guys, have a good few
All right.
weeks.
Great seeing
Thank
you
you.
both.
Thank
Great
you.
seeing
Same
you
here.
Have a
both.
wonderful vacation, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank you.
talk soon.
Cheers.
Okay,
Talk
take
soon.
care.
Ciao tutti.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.